Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my webinar on bone marrow and stem cell transplants. My name is Ashley Filardi, and I will be leading us tonight. I am currently earning my master's degree in public relations from Full Sail University. I have experience working with 2 different nonprofit organizations in Central Florida, and I am eager to share my knowledge with you tonight. I plan to discuss what bone marrow and stem cell transplants are, the diseases they cure, and what takes place during the transplant procedure. Lastly, ideas for supporting a child in need will be shared. I hope you learned something new tonight and leave inspired to make a difference. Let's get started. First things first, what even are bone marrow and stem cell transplants? They sound really complex, but actually it's pretty straightforward. According to Stanford Children's Hospital, a bone marrow transplant involves taking cells that are normally found in bone marrow, the stem cells, filtering those cells and giving them back either to the patient they were taken from or to another person. The goal of a bone marrow transplant is to transfuse healthy bone marrow cells into a person after his or her own unhealthy bone marrow has been eliminated. As you can see in this diagram, bone marrow is a soft, spongy tissue found inside bones. The bone marrow in the hips, breastbone, spine, ribs, and skull contains cells that produce the body's blood cells. You may have pictured bone marrow being extracted from a hip because that is the preferred and most common site. Now to dive even deeper. Every type of blood cell in the bone marrow begins as a stem cell. Stem cells are immature cells that are able to produce other blood cells that mature and function as needed. Stem cells are a crucial element of bone marrow because when transplanted, they find their way to the recipient's marrow and begin to mature and produce all types of blood cells that are needed by the body. Technically, there are 2 types of bone marrow transplants, autologous and allogeneic. In an autologous bone marrow transplant, a person's own cells are used. Their bone marrow is either harvested or their stem cells are collected and then are stored for transplant that takes place at a later time. In the other type of transplant, allogeneic, cells come from a family member or unrelated donor who shares the same genetic type as the patient. Sometimes family members are a match for this type of transplant, but unfortunately that's not always the case, and patients have to rely on the help from outside sources. According to the nonprofit organization Kids Beating Cancer, there are over 80 types of diseases that bone marrow and stem cell transplants can cure. I'm positive that you have heard of many of these, as they are way too common and sadly many are fatal. A few of the diseases include cancer, leukemia, lymphomas, aplastic anemia, immune deficiencies, sickle cell disease, etc. Be the match associated with the National Bone Marrow Registry, and on their website, they provide a list of diseases treatable by the patients. I'll show you the page Diseases Treatable by Transplants, and you can kind of how many are on here. Bone marrow diseases, inherited immune system disorders, metabolic disorders. The list is large. Okay, transplant procedure works. According to both the Mayo Clinic and the Stanford Children's Hospital, there are 3 stages for the patient. First, they are prepared for the transplant. This conditioning process includes chemo and possibly radiation therapy. The purpose is to destroy the bad cells, suppress the immune system, and prepare the bone marrow for the new stem cells. The next stage is the bone marrow transplant. This only occurs after the conditioning process. During the transplant, stem cells are infused into the patient's body through the central line. The infusion is painless and the patients are awake the entire time. The transplanted stem cells make their way to the bone marrow where they begin creating new blood cells. The process of creating new blood cells can take weeks. This short video from Mayo Clinic illustrates the first 2 phases we just discussed.
Bone marrow is the spongy tissue inside some bones. Its job is to produce blood cells. If your bone marrow isn't functioning properly because of cancer or another disease, you may receive a stem cell transplant. To prepare for a stem cell transplant, you receive chemotherapy to kill the diseased cells and malfunctioning bone marrow. Then transplanted blood stem cells are put into your bloodstream. The transplanted stem cells find their way to your marrow, where ideally they begin producing new, healthy blood cells.
Okay. This leads us to stage 3, recovery. Patients remain under close medical care after a transplant. They will receive blood and other tests to monitor their condition. Patients are kept in the hospital for several weeks after their procedures because they may experience infections and complications. Okay, now we have covered everything you need to know about bone marrow and stem cell transplants. It's time to discuss what can be done. You can help support a child in need of a transplant. The first way to help is by joining the National Bone Marrow Registry. This means that you could potentially donate your bone marrow or stem cells to someone in need. The name of the National Bone Marrow Registry is Be the Match. According to their website, 70% of patients do not have a fully matched donor in their family. Their doctor will turn to Be the Match for help finding an unrelated donor. This video from City of Hope shows the process for donating. Okay. You can also visit the Be the Match website to learn about joining the registry. And the different options that you have. Where's my link on here? Here we go. This shows you how to join online, how to find a donor registry drive in your area, tells you transplant basics, supporting the cause, patients and their family, ways to volunteer. There's a lot that this website offers, and I encourage you to check it out. Okay. The other option for helping is supporting a nonprofit organization. Kids Beating Cancer is the ideal choice because it is the only nonprofit of its kind in America. It provides access to cures through the science of cutting-edge bone marrow and stem cell transplants at the Kids Beating Cancer's Pediatric Transplant Center. This organization directly supports children in need of a transplant. So if needles aren't your thing, donating financially to this organization is an amazing alternative. I actually created this video a few months ago for the organization to illustrate what your money goes towards when you donate. So I'd like to show it to you now.
Hello, I'm Margaret Getz, CEO, President, and founder of Kids Beating Cancer. Thank you for all the support over the last 26 years. Your generosity has allowed us to provide resources and support for children with life-threatening diseases and their families throughout the treatment process, as well as access to cures through bone marrow and stem cell transplants in the Kids Beating Cancer Pediatric Transplant Center. Because of you, we can keep hope alive, fight for a cure for every child, and keep families together. I want to show you our Kids Beating Cancer Pediatric Transplant Center and a few of the programs we provide, so you can see some of the many ways your donations are helping. Through our Fund the Match program, we fund the hospital and lab costs never covered by Medicaid. This allows any child in need of a transplant the opportunity to identify the best possible donor so every child can access the best medical treatment and the only hope for a cure. Our My Room program allows each child to put their distinct fingerprint on the place they will be calling home for many weeks, even months, by allowing each child to pick the theme of their hospital room. Take a look.
Let me know when you're ready. Ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you ready? Come on, so keep your eyes closed. Keep it closed. Keep it closed. Open. Oh my god.
So I can. What do you even think of this?
Oh my god.
It's Winnie the Pooh! Look at all of this stuff. Our Food for Families program provides families and patients access to the most basic necessity, food, 24/7. The Kids Beating Cancer Family Kitchen allows families to never worry where their next meal will come from. And we also provide meal vouchers to families 3 times a day to receive food from the hospital cafeteria at no cost. With your support, we can continue to bring smiles to faces like these. Thank you for helping us save children's lives, one transplant at a time.
Thank you, Kids Beating Cancer.
Okay, so you can also explore the Kids Beating Cancer website, which I linked here, to learn more about what they do. Their programs are on here, more information on the transplants, and several ways to help, as well as the direct page for donations. Well, that brings us to the end of the webinar. To recap, we discussed what bone marrow and stem cell transplants are, what diseases they cure, what the actual procedure consists of, and how you can help make a difference. I hope you've learned something today and are leaving feeling empowered. I challenge you to share what you learned and to do what you can to help save the life of a child in need. If you'd like to reach out to me with questions or comments, please don't hesitate. I also provided the contact information for Kids Beating Cancer. Thank you for watching. Let's save lives together, one transplant at a time.